Well, hello, I'm Jeffrey Palermo, and I'm the Chief Architect of Clear Measure, and we're a DevOps-Centered Software Engineering company here based in Texas, serving the U.S., and we focus on Microsoft platform development technologies and cloud, and I'm here to present a DevOps roadmap that can help you release software in hours rather than weeks or months. And so really excited to be with you here today. Um, as we dive in a few logistics in order to go over, there is a chat feature in the software, in the Zoom software, and you can use that. And there's also a Q&A window. If there's any um, questions, then please put them in the Q&A window, and um, and I'll make sure that all the questions get answered before the webinar is over, and and we'll go from there. So, if you wouldn't mind someone verifying you can hear my audio coming through loud and clear, I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, yeah, all right, thank you. Okay, I don't need everyone. We have a lot of people on this webinar. It's amazing. Let's get started. I'm going to try to get you in and out as quickly as possible, not take up a full hour of your valuable time. But so I'm here to present today a DevOps roadmap that can help enable your team to move fast, build your software in a smart manner, and run your system with confidence. And so regardless of the challenge that you're facing today, you have an important responsibility as a software leader. And my hope for you is that you'll be able to take away some information that can help your project succeed. I think we have some development managers, some VP of operations, some CIOs, some lead architects, some software leaders here on this webinar, as well as some senior engineers. So the webinar is organized in this fashion. We're going to talk about the challenge that our industry faces, and I'm sure each one of you face. Some of the symptoms that you might be seeing, a roadmap for how to address the challenge. We'll look at some details of each, and then we'll cap off with some value that we can provide and ways that we can assist you. So there is a free offer that we have today just for webinar attendees. And I've put out my latest book, and the manuscript is hot off the presses. It's actually not, it'll be another 6 to 8 weeks before it's actually out, completely released and listed on Amazon. But the book is .NET DevOps for Azure. And we're going to be giving away a ebook version of the preview edition. And so if you will email me directly, and my email address is right there on the screen. The email address will also be on the last slide. If you'll email me directly, then we'll give you a free ebook version of the book .NET DevOps for Azure. If you would like some print books, right now you can buy directly from the book manufacturer. Go to lulu.com and search for .NET DevOps, and then you can order directly from them as well. And the book will be on Amazon probably in 6 to 8 weeks. So that's a free offer. And let's move on. So the challenge today is that we all want high speed and we want high quality software delivery. If our software delivery cycles are measured in months or weeks, we want to move that down to days or hours or minutes. And we want to move very, very quickly. And everybody wants that. Now, we don't want to move quickly and sacrifice quality. We need to keep that up as well. So there's some symptoms that we sometimes can see, and then there's root causes that might be under the covers that might not be so obvious. Every one of you has probably encountered disruptive, long, and error-prone deployments, and things that obviously go wrong, or long lead times, and you might be wondering what it is that's causing that. Or there might be some unmitigated risks where you just have a gut feel about it. And some of the common root causes, not all of them, but some of the common root causes that we see across our client engagements are on the bottom right. And one is insufficient work environment, incomplete software process, or lack of transparency and measurement. And today we're going to try to cover some important points of all three of these about what it takes to have really a complete work environment, a complete process, and have enough visibility in that where you can measure. Okay. All right. So the conventional view of DevOps is that you set up an automated continuous delivery pipeline and then work in short cycles to move software features and changes from idea and analysis out to production and to real usage. And that's important, but that's only the start. So before we move on, let's just touch on the basics of the automated DevOps pipeline, because so much emphasis is given in the industry to automated builds and automated deployments, and let's get the code out there. But that's before we talk about what else needs to be there. Let's just dive into those elements. Now, this is a highly shrunken technical blueprint for the structure and flow of a pipeline implemented with Azure DevOps Services and Octopus Deploy. It has continuous integration build, a 3-tier deployment pipeline. And by the way, you'll never have fewer than 3 environments, even for simple applications or microservices. We've done some other webinars that dive deep into all the details of this model. So please reach out if you need some more information on how to set up a software system for continuous integration and automated deployments. But don't forget, not just the front end of the application, the database needs to be there as well. And so this is the top third of the architectural poster right here on the screen. If you are interested in a full 2-foot by 3-foot version of this architectural poster, you could send it to your latest print shop or whatnot. We'd be happy to share with you a full high resolution PDF of it. If you just follow up with us or put in the Q&A window that you'd like a version of the poster, and we'll make sure that you get that. All right. So now I want to talk about the challenge of our industry, and I want to use an analogy. So consider a mechanic shop. Let's say that you want to open up a new auto mechanic shop, and so you go to the local auto mechanic school and you say, I want to hire the top 7% of your next graduating class. I see that you have a class coming up and graduation in a few weeks. I want to hire the top tier. I'll pay whatever it takes. You order brand new, beautiful equipment, new tools, only the best will do. And then the day comes where it's graduation day. You hire the top tier, the smartest, most capable, freshly trained auto mechanics, top of their class. You bring them to the building, beautiful building, great location. You gather the team in front and you say, okay, team, we're really excited. We're going to open up in a few days. Let's all rally around. Let's get ready. And we're going to open up soon. And so you walk away, you're really proud and you're excited. And the new team that you just hired, top of their class, they look at each other wide-eyed with fear, because none of them had ever been trained to set up a environment for themselves. They were trained in an environment that had already been professionally set up for themselves. And so the same conundrum happens in the software industry. Our education system doesn't really train this. And for you who have been in the industry for a long time, you learned it on the job. And so as software leaders, we need to equip our teams with a complete environment so that they can perform, so that they can work. So our model illuminates the missing layers that enable DevOps-centered software engineering, and we'll go through there. So of each of these layers, best practices, defect removal, team workflow, architecture blueprints, and cloud operations, of each of these layers, each must have a sound strategy, be executed with discipline, and have objective measures. And it's not enough to say that you've equipped your team with a defect removal, for example, which, by the way, your strategy would be the selection of defect detection methods. And in this case, we benefit from the software research of Capers-Jones, who spells out the combination of defect detection methods that are proven to achieve a high degree of quality. But our strategy would be the selection of which methods to use, and it would take the guesswork out of the process for our team. So let's quickly touch on the layers that make up a complete work environment. One of the example best practices commonly selected is the use of stable and reusable components. That's a great practice, but there are so many practices that have been labeled, quote, best practices, that you would never be able to use all of them on any given project. There's just too many. And on the left-hand side, there's plenty to choose from and many, many more, but you need to choose which practices you are going to equip your team with and use on a particular project, on a particular piece of software, because there's no way that you're going to use all the practices that have ever been labeled as a best practice. So let's take the example of stable, reusable components. This practice is also backed by industry research, and it drastically cuts down on custom development costs and timelines. In the .NET world, these are often NuGet packages, and even among teams that declared that they use NuGet and use and reuse these packages, we often find large sections of code that could have been easily replaced by one of these packages, whether open source or commercial. And so we find that the team managers, they're often unaware of the missed opportunities to save significant chunks of schedule, and were unaware of the existence of that code, and where they could have made better build versus buy decisions and used more reusable components that had a track record of high quality. So that's just one example, but you need to formally choose which practices that the team should be using, and then figure out what it means to execute that on a regular basis and measure that it's happening. The next layer is defect removal. Capers-Jones's summary of research also shows that far less than half of defects in a software system are defects from code. There's a distribution. For every 5 defects, about 1 is going to come from requirements, 1.23 is going to come from design, 1.75 is going to come from the source code itself, 0.6 is going to be problems with supporting documentation, and then 0.4, almost 10%, is going to be from bad fixes. And if you want to check out the summary yourself, you can just search the internet for a white paper by Capers-Jones from 2012 called Software Defect Origins and Removal Methods. It's Software Defect Origins and Removal Methods. Based on the type of software we have, we need to strategically select the defect detection methods and defect removal methods that are shown in the industry to get us above 85% defect removal, and then measure as those methods are applied to ensure that our teams achieve that level and maintain it. Interestingly enough, on best practices, we talked about build versus buy and approved reusable components. Well, on the top offenders for defect creation is unapproved reused code from external sources. It is in the short list of major defect origins. So NuGet is great for packages that are strategically identified, but many teams also find that external packages are reused by their developers with no vetting process and no visibility, and they're just pulled in. And with NuGet, as with any website, any one person can just post a library online and then people can use it. So that can be a double-edged sword as well. Double-edged sword. All right, let's go to the next layer, team workflow. So most software project tracking tools use swim lanes or columns for statuses to move a piece of work through the process. But engaging with our clients, we find that the tracked process in these tools is much less granular than what actually happens in real life. And if the motion of work in the team doesn't reflect in the work tracking tool, then you'll have bottlenecks that happen. They'll remain hidden and they'll sap the schedule. And your complete workflow, when you map it out in your project management software, it sheds light on every bottleneck source and enables teams to have a constant and predictable flow that can be tuned and measured. All right, the next layer is architecture blueprints. And I want to refer to a 1995 white paper by Philippe Christian called The 4+1 View Model of Software Architecture. And you can do an internet search for that as well. The 4+1 View Model of Software Architecture. It is still to this day probably the best method for iterative emergent software architecture. So the strategy in this layer, you got to think about that. Strategically, you're defining what is being built, what is cleared for investment, what is deferred and not going to be worked on. Every professional that builds something uses design drawings and design models in the communication of what's to be built. And so teams that lack this are constantly struggling to place the same image in the minds of each team member. And we often ask about how the system is structured, and far too many times we spend over an hour in a conference room harvesting the architecture out of the heads of the team members and drawing it on a whiteboard. So architecture blueprints, that's the definition of what is to be built. It's the tool for team alignment. Imagine a business with no business plan, no marketing strategy, or no quarterly goal. Nobody would be aligned. So you definitely want to use that and strategically make sure that it exists and is up to date. And you'll have different transition states because you only need to draft the architecture for the long-term vision and then what the system will look like in the next increment. Next is cloud operations. So operating the software system is really how we make sure that the people relying on the software are receiving the full value from it. And if we rely on a user to report an issue, then one, they're going to be annoyed, but two, we're only capturing a subset of the information that we could potentially have. So we should see through how we do operations that a user is struggling, much less if they received an error. And many teams have some logs, but they don't have enough. And someone with administrative access has to log into a production server to look through them. No aggregation, no performance timing, no custom events, lacking in telemetry. So the goal is to make the software system completely observable, to know what it's doing all the time. So this is our full model, and we see the different layers, and we see that the automated DevOps pipeline is at the middle, the ability to flow through code changes through a build process, through environments, the ability to have feedback all along the pipeline with multiple layers of automated testing and static code analysis so that we receive feedback when there's any problem. But there's other layers in putting together a complete DevOps environment that'll give you the continuous learning that is the third way of DevOps and enable you to move faster and faster around this cycle of plan, code, integrate, package, release, operate, learn. And so each area needs to have a strategy. And you as the leader, that's your job to set vision and direction and actually create that strategy. Make sure your team is executing that consistently and then measuring the results to make sure that you have the right strategy so that you can continually adjust. With the goal of moving fast, building smart, and running with confidence. So we have plenty of case studies and customers that we've been able to make a huge impact for and celebrate in their success. And we've seen this model make a huge impact for our clients. But you can see more success stories on our website at clear-measure.com. And we see teams, when equipped with a complete professional work environment and a strategically determined process, we see these teams become truly world-class. And you hear of teams who move fast at Google, Netflix, Microsoft, but any of your teams can be just as effective when equipped properly. One easy way to get some help from us is to have us do some architect level advisement or consulting. And if you'd like a second pair of eyes on your organization, your environment, or your process, we're happy to help there. if you need us to take care of something specific to enable your team, we've got the full capability to do that. And I like to personally oversee all of the projects here. At the bottom, you can see some of the example engagements: project definition, DevOps assessment, software review, modernization roadmap. If you have an existing system that you're not quite sure how to modernize it, there's ways to get control of your software. So here's my contact information. Again, my email address, like I promised, is on the screen. And feel free to get in touch, call, email, tweet, and happy to answer any questions that you have either today or anytime in the future. I love talking with people out in the industry. And next week, if anyone is planning on going to the Microsoft Build Conference, I will be there. I'm on staff at the conference, and I'll be in the development area. And I also have quite a number of printed books, the .NET DevOps for Azure. Come see me, and I'd love to meet you in person. And also, Microsoft tends to stream a lot of the content, especially the keynotes. So on Monday, make sure, if you're not at the conference, make sure to stream the keynote, and that'll be kind of exciting to see what the Microsoft platform world is doing over the next few years, because Build always tends to be forward looking. And if you're looking for some more educational content on a weekly basis, we put out and sponsor a podcast called the Azure DevOps Podcast. You can find it on www.azuredevops.show. And we've got quite the litany of past guests, interview guests, and shows and topics. So that's another resource for you. But I want to thank you for your time. I know your time is valuable. I told you I try to get this information delivered and get you in and out in a timely fashion, and hopefully I've done that. And so I hope everyone has a great day. And as we say on the podcast, you're in the software business. So have a great day and keep shipping.